This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Buzzard Roost Saddles. Buzzard Roost Saddles was born in the swamps of Santa Maria, South Louisiana, and their purpose is to get you standing over your next carcass so you can pick 'em clean. Proudly made in the USA, every Buzzard Roost saddle is handcrafted with a patent-pending system that brings you independent angle adjustments on your top and bottom panels to provide ultimate comfort. Standing by their motto, "We ain't fancy," Buzzard Roost helps you get the job done without making things overcomplicated. If you're looking for the next tool in your hunting arsenal, you can connect with Buzzard Roost Saddles on Facebook and Instagram, or you can visit their website at buzzardroostsaddles.com. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Hunt the Wild podcast. I'm your host Adam Bowlds. Today I'm joined with Dan Hansel of Trophy Tracks. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Adam.
Yeah. We had a little technical difficulty trying to get in the room, but I'm glad we got it sorted out because we've been trying to set this up for a little over a month now. So we're back in business. But I'm going to have you go ahead and just introduce and tell everybody a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got started hunting and involved in the outdoors.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Dan Hansel. I'm the founder and CEO of Trophy Tracks. It's a mobile hunting journal app, and it's available on both iOS and Android, and some more different ways to access it coming up this summer. But we'll get into some of that later. But a little bit more about me. I've spent my whole career in the technology field. I've always did end user support. I've always worked on computers, always dabbled in some software. But my passion is hunting. My passion is the outdoors, hunting. And I've always kind of had this idea in the back of my head, like I want to do something that helps other people hunt smarter, right? And it became apparent to me that there wasn't a really good solution other than, writing down on a piece of paper where you were, what you saw, who you were with, and that kind of stuff. And I thought, well, there's got to be a better way to do this. So 2017, took the idea to a little startup factory here in central Pennsylvania and pitched this idea, and everybody really loved it. They thought that this was a great idea because we're collecting a whole lot of really good data, and it's really intended to help the individual hunter. Started this back in 2017, and now it's 2022, and here we are. We have an app on the app stores for 2 years now. We have some changes that maybe we could talk about coming up here in this podcast, which will be cool to talk about. And really, growing up in Pennsylvania, I've been a hunter since, I was able to go at 12 years old. I remember being, 9, 10, 11, and I couldn't go yet. And I would sit there at the door and watch my dad and all his family go hunting and just be sad that, I couldn't go yet. So I've always kind of had that in my family, and a lot of my dad's friends were hunters. And, I'd always be hanging out at camp with them and talking about deer and turkeys and waterfowl. And, I couldn't do it until I was 12 in Pennsylvania. But, once I was 12, I basically never left the woods after I was 12 years old. So I've been doing this for a long time, and, it's just a lot of fun to me. This is my passion. I live it. I love it. I look forward to it every year, and I can't wait to get back to it,
So let me ask you this, and it could be a sore subject. I don't know, but you gotta cover it and give me your honest answer. I'm not aware of any other apps that are like Trophy Tracks, but is there any other apps out there like Trophy Tracks or similar or kind of?
Not really. Now, when I'm talking to hunters, they always want to bring up Onyx Hunt or Hunt Stand, things like that. They're very good at mapping, right? And I always have to distinguish like what Trophy Tracks is compared to those other apps. And Trophy Tracks is more the journaling aspect of it, right? You could use it live during a hunt, or you could do it on your couch when you get home that evening. But it's all about, where did I hunt? what did I see? When did I see it? And, if you want to add some harvest note or upload your pictures or add a harvest to indicate that you got something. But I think the key difference there is we're collecting the weather data. And the weather data, as you know, as an archery hunter, because you and I talked a little bit about archery hunting, the weather is such an important factor in everything. And we are the only app that I know of that not only collects all your observations, but we're getting the exact weather details at that geolocation for where you're hunting. So, the more you hunt, the more logs you create, the better you're able to start putting a pattern to the animals that you're seeing. And, are specific locations doing better at certain times of the year? Or is it all weather based? Is it, before a front or after a front? You could start really digging into the data with trophy tracks. And I think that's kind of how we distinguish ourselves from, all these other apps. And when hunters come up to me and say, hey, I use Onyx, I'm like, great, I do too. Like it's fantastic for what it is. And the same with HuntStand and maybe HuntWise. I know HuntWise has some weather details in it, and they like to predict like when you get to, when good days might be based on like a 5-star rating on the day. And I think that's good from a predictive side of things. But what Trophy Tracks is doing is we're collecting your own real data that you're putting into it, and you're reporting on your own data. So this isn't data at large. This is what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. But I'm glad you asked that, because I do get that question often. I've been doing a lot of outdoor shows here in Pennsylvania, and that's like the number one thing that, hunters come up to me and say, oh, I already use Onyx. I'm like, well, wait a minute. It's a little different than Onyx,
Yeah.
Not taking anything away from them, because they do a good job of what they do. This is more the journaling aspect of it, and a way to remember and look back at stuff.
So I've always kind of been interested in journaling my hunts, and I always say every year that I'm going to journal my hunts. And I usually do 1 or 2 entries on my notes on my phone, and then I fall off. And the reason being is, I feel like I'm going to, at the end of the season, even though I'm going to have all this information, it's going to be so hard to kind of just, it's really difficult when you have December 8th in your notes and you're trying to scroll through and find it and all this other stuff. And I don't know, for me, organization and that kind of thing, being quick, we all live busy lives. I don't have time to search through my notes for 20 minutes to find out what was going on December 8th. So I'm definitely going to be using Trophy Tracks. We talked about it a little bit, but I'm going to be using it a little bit during squirrel season. So I'm interested to see how that's going to play out. I told Dan that I wasn't, I played with the app a little bit, but I'm not going to like do any kind of entry stuff until I'm out in the woods, because I want the full experience. So I'm holding off. So as far as like membership costs, is that like a monthly thing? Is it a yearly thing? Is it a one-time fee? And, how much does it cost?
So it's free to download. It's free to begin using, and you could log unlimited amount of hunts for free. There is a pro version though that we see a lot of users upgrading after they start using it. They're like, okay, this is really cool. I want the pro version. So the pro version, we have 3 different plans. You could pay by month, and it's $5 a month. Or you could pay, we call it the seasonal package, which is a 3-month at a time, and that's $15. Or you could pay for a year, which is $50. So we have those 3 different options, and we see a wide variety of users choosing each and every one of those options. The other advantages of the pro version is you could upload unlimited amount of images. So I know that, hunters have trophies hanging around their house. I see them behind you. They're behind me, and we're very proud of that. But it's fun to like look back on those pictures and remember like, oh, that was, 2017 and yours was 2016, just to take a picture of it or find a picture, you could upload that to Trophy Tracks and go make a retroactive log. So that's pretty cool. And we allow hunters to upload as many pictures as they want to their journal. The other advantages of Hunt Pro, kind of the meat and potatoes, and I was kind of talking a little bit about this, was the data that we're collecting. And again, this is your data. This isn't collective data. This isn't regional data. This is your own data. So what you put in is what you're going to get back out. And what I mean by that is, as you start making your hunt logs per the locations that you're hunting, you get advanced stats at those locations. So now you could click on, your best tree stand or the location that you're hunting, and it'll pull in all those hunts that you've done at that location. And we give you a really cool like bar graph that shows you like kind of a heat map of what time of the day do you see most of your observations. So you could really start to tell then, okay, these are morning stands, these are evening stands. And I know that, big time hunters pretty much know that, but it's nice to see like a really cool visual on that. And then not only do we, indicate when your best times to see animals are at that specific location, we also then dig deeper into the weather patterns. Well, what was the weather at that point? Is this early season in October, or is this, kind of mid to late season in November? And then what's the weather doing at that time? Is it in the 30s and 40s, or is it in the 50s and 60s, or maybe it's down south and you get a real cool day that that in the future, if you have a cool day, I'm going to go out there and hunt, because you're going to end up seeing a lot of activity in that specific time zone and when the weather's like that. So that's really the big advantage of Hunt Pro is once you start making logs, now you're going to want to know, all right, what am I seeing? Where am I seeing? I want to pick the best place to be. And I think that was like one of my big like problem statements, going into this idea was I'd wake up on a morning or, go to bed in the evening and wonder like, okay, where am I going to go tomorrow? Like, what's the best spot that I should go? But now I can look back on that and remember, okay, well, it's early October. I've already hunted these stands. I didn't really see much. This one might be my best stand because my stats show that this is going to be a good spot based on the weather information, and plan to go there tomorrow, because you never know what's going to happen. But my stats basically are stacking the odds in my favor. Trying to hunt smarter by logging all that stuff. And I think the key point there though is it's your data. We're not crowdsourcing this data or doing anything by state or region or anything like that. It's all what you log.
So before we kind of jump into the big plans for 2022, this just kind of popped in my head. Do you guys, or maybe you have plans to do this, I don't know, allow like elite members or whatever to be able to send that data to other members? Because I could kind of imagine, like, I'll just make up a scenario here. The dad's out of town on a business trip, and I don't know, 500 miles away, and the son's going to be hunting this specific piece of property, but he needs, the dad's got the data, but there's like, can he click on there to share to his son and kind of give his son like, these are the peak times to be there during the week? Or, it's kind of similar, I guess, to like sharing a pinpoint on OnX, but it would be with data.
Yeah. To answer your question right now, no.
Okay.
We're not sharing any sort of data with anybody. And this is something that I learned by talking to a whole bunch of hunters, while we were developing the app and testing the app. And we asked, like, would you want to share this? And a lot of the hunters responded by, no, this is my data. Like it's mine. I don't want to share it with anybody. And we respect that privacy. Being in IT for the last 15 plus years, I know that as soon as you add that share button, it really changes your privacy statements, your terms of service. Like everything kind of explodes at that point. So
yeah,
we're talking about it. We think that there is some sort of social aspect to it as far as sharing that data, but we also have to be very careful with how we do that and how we put it together. Um, and hunters don't really like to give out their locations, but in your scenario,
Hmm.
same with me and my father. I like to tell him what I saw and where I was. So what I do right now is, as I'm making my journal entry for that day, before I click save, or even after I click save and I can view it, I just take a screenshot of the app and I
Yeah.
send them the picture and say, hey, I end up seeing 12 different deer, and my best one tonight was a nice 8 point, but he was 75 yards away. So at least he gets a general idea of where I was, what I saw, how many I saw, things like that. But yeah, we are thinking about that, but we just have to be very strategic in how we go about doing that.
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about just like going in an app and clicking on stuff. You don't ever really think about, I don't think about, because I'm not an IT guy, about all the legalities and all that stuff and all the paperwork behind the scenes. So that makes a lot of sense. Big plans for 2022 for trophy tracks. Can you talk about any of that, or is that still Area 51 and you can't talk about it?
Oh no, I'm happy to, because this is fun for us. We're always learning, right? And feedback is a gift. We love getting feedback from users. We love getting feedback from hunters. Some of the best feedback that we've gotten over the years is being present at outdoor shows and people coming up to us and, hey, I heard about you guys. I've been using it. I like it. Here's an idea, right? So we have a long list of features, but we also think that it's important to not completely redesign the app, but kind of spice it up a little bit from where it's at now, and just make it a little bit more user friendly. Add a few features here and there, and that's what we're going to work on this summer. Um, our goal is to have a new version of this released, by September, right before the season. That way, users could start using it with their trail cams and stuff like that. And to get into a little bit more of that, right now it's available on iOS and Android. Well, this latest version that we're going to put out, you'll also be able to do it through Google Chrome. So as you're sitting in front of your laptop or even on a mobile device, you could just go to our website and sign in directly like that. So it takes that download and update, the need to go to the App Store and download it, or if there's an update, to do those automatic updates. It kind of takes that away if you want to use it in a web browser. So we think that that's really cool. We would probably be the first app to be available on the web that's not like all these other apps that you actually have to go download and use it that way. We don't want to go away from that, but we want to add this kind of big feature so you could do it right through the website. So that, as soon as you talk website, that really gets into the big design, right? Because now you're not designing it necessarily for an app, you're designing it for the web. And the web kind of operates a little bit differently than an app does. So that's kind of why we've decided to redesign this. And with all these new updates coming out, we want a very clean design. We realized that we could do some of the functions behind the scenes a little bit quicker and a little bit better. So we want to take advantage of some of that too. So that's really the big plans for this year is to work on the design. Last year we focused on our external website. We released a new version of our website, which is really cool. Check it out. I see it scrolling at the bottom if you're watching on YouTube. Um, so trophytracks.com, and you could read a little bit more about Trophy Tracks and some of our vision and some of the features that we have out there. So that's a little bit of behind the scenes what we're working at right now.
Yeah, I'll leave you guys up to all that. I just want to go and click on the app. I don't want to get involved in all that. Oh god, makes my head kind of hurt a little bit. Um, but I know that stuff's hard, and we got to have somebody to do it because we need to be able to use the app. So,
That's
um,
right.
so the big hype, around the United States right now is turkey hunting, and I don't know, kind of getting not a big turkey hunter. I'm too deaf really to turkey hunt. I'm deaf in my right ear, so I can't ever tell where they're coming from. So I want to jump into some deer hunting stuff. So I don't know if everyone's fired up about it yet, but I'm fired up about it all the time. So you're a food plot guy, a new food plot guy, aren't you?
Oh yeah, that's I'm big into habitat, big into food plots. I have a lot of fun with that. That just it gets me away from behind the computer screen and gets me outside. So anything that I could do outside, involving hunting, whether it's setting up tree stands, moving tree stands, doing food plots, that's my opportunity to get outside. And I just really love doing that.
So didn't you just purchase some ground or just move or something? Got a new field a couple years ago or last year?
Yeah, yeah. Last year, my fiance and I we end up moving, and we found this awesome piece of property. Has about 2.5, 3 acres of old, fallow field that they just left go. I think at one point they were raising cattle here. At one point they were raising goats, but it's very wooded. I'm a couple parcels away from the state game lands, and even when we first moved in, we would see our same group of 5 to 7 does here constantly. So immediately my mind was going to I'm gonna change that field. I'm gonna put some food in it, and I'm gonna attract a lot of deer. And that's what I did last year. Yeah, I took an old fallow field. I actually was lucky enough to have an excavator come over and help clear it because it was just overran with autumn olive and some invasive species like that, and really doesn't provide much fall value to the deer. So long story short, we got it cleared out, and I began to plant a fall food plot, and we could get into some of that, like how I did it too. And it worked. I mean, it was so awesome. When as soon as you seed into it and you can't see anything, and then that first week or two, it starts to pop. And then like 3 or 4 weeks later, you can't keep deer out of it. I just loved it. I was watching deer often. Had a great season as far as watching deer and keeping deer here, which was great.
So I am no means a farmer. I mean, I can plant tomato plants and all that stuff and make stuff grow, but I don't know anything about tractors and tilling and spraying and all this stuff. So I have to imagine that when you plant food plots, that there has to be, it's probably like tech equipment. Like there's got to be a million options out there, and like for a new guy, you've got to probably be like which one to buy, because I can just see it now. Like one guy's telling you to buy one thing, one guy's telling you to buy this thing, one guy's on the West Coast, one guy's on the East Coast. There's a million factors that kind of go into it. So can you kind of talk about, um, you went through and you had that excavator clear it out or whatever. What's the whole process of what you did next? You probably tilled it up, I imagine, but how did you select what to plant? And does it matter what you plant when it comes to like how much time you have to mess with it? I guess if that makes sense, because I know a lot of people, like farmers around here, they spray the crops with water, they crop dust them for bugs, and like there's probably a lot of guys that plant food plots that have a lot of time to mess with them. And then there's guys that like work 60, 70 hours a week and just want to plant their food plot and let it go. So I have to be curious on what you planted and how much time comes into, like, how much it plays a factor in it.
Well, yeah, and those are all great questions, and you know, it, the correct answer about food plots is it's really dependent, right? It's dependent on your resources, it's dependent on your land, it's dependent upon what your neighbors are doing, where maybe big ag fields are. Like it's all very dependent based. But I'll go over like what I did in this specific area. And
Okay.
I've been doing this for a couple of years now. And, since 2016, 2017, I kind of started dabbling in it. I've learned a lot over the years. And, I want to call out one guy that's just awesome. He's got a great YouTube channel. I've read all his books. I always read his blogs. I now watch his YouTubes. Jeff Sturgis from Whitetail Habitat Solutions. I caught on to him a couple years ago, probably 2012, 2013 time range. And that's when I started reading his books. I'm like, okay, this guy's on to something. He knows what he's doing. Let me listen to him. So I'm following his practice for food plots. And I must say, it works out very well. So in my specific example, I have about 3 acres to plant. And what I end up doing is I split the food plot into 2. So on the top half, let me back up a little bit. On the bottom half of the food plot, once it was tilled, because I was lucky enough to get an excavator in last year to kind of prep the soil, I planted oats, buck forage oats and Austrian winter peas and a couple layers of winter rye. And I'll go into some of the different layering techniques of that. Okay, so that's kind of like your early season. And I started planting that in the beginning of August. Now, granted, I'm in the northern hemisphere here in Pennsylvania, central PA. So the timing's really important based on your region too. So the oats come up first, the peas come up first, and the winter rye, it'll start popping, first big rainstorm you get and get the ground nice and moist, it'll start popping up. In the deer, that's what they'll hit first, is that oats and peas and the rye. And then in the top half of the food plot, I did a brassica blend. And, following Jeff Sturgis's YouTube channel, he calls out a couple different websites to go buy some of the seed. Plus, I have some friends around here that are either resellers of seed or they produce the seed themselves. So I tried a couple different blends of brassica. So that's like your purple top turnips, your tillage radishes, any other sort of turnip that you could think of that's kind of mixed into this brassica mix. And I planted that about mid-August is when I planted that. And you only need about 6 pounds per acre. If you want to go a little heavier, you can, but it's really not worth it. You kind of want those brassica to really get big. But what I did is I did this all with a hand spreader, and I had a sprayer on the back of my 4-wheeler that I sprayed to kill all the grass and the weeds. So if we back up even further, before the excavator was in, I felt it was really important to kill as much of the grasses and weeds that were coming up. So I actually did 3 different sprayings. The first time I sprayed, I used glyphosate and 2,4-D. So glyphosate will kill like any leaf plant that's out. And the 2,4-D is kind of more focused on like the weeds and, the broadleafs, right? So then I waited a couple of weeks. I sprayed it again with glyphosate, and then I sprayed it again in the middle of July with just glyphosate. And by then, I'm pretty much down to the dirt. From those 3 sprayings in the spring into the summer, down to dirt. All the excavator really did is he took his bucket, he turned his bucket and his teeth, and kind of just back drug it and tilled it up for me, because I'm on a pretty steep hill, and I don't have a tractor. So my plan is to do no-till.
Okay.
So fast forward into, now, here it is May. It's clearly way after the season. That all my food plots worked fantastic. I could not keep deer out of it. But, after the winter, what'll happen is you'll have some leftover rye, and it'll pop first in the spring. And the deer will find that pretty quickly, because there's nothing else green out there besides winter rye. And then, it'll eventually get, I still have some weed seeds in my soil. So I have a few weeds popping up here and there. But my plan now is I'm going to plant buckwheat at the end of May, beginning of June. And the reason I'm planting buckwheat is, again, I'm following Jeff Sturgis's plan here, but I'm going to plant the buckwheat in 50 pounds per acre. So I have 150 pounds down my basement right now, ready to go. And as soon as I put put that on the ground. I'm going to go and spray all the weeds and all the winter rye that came up, and then let the buckwheat pop up. In about 7 or 8 weeks, that'll put me at the beginning of August. Then at that point, that's when I'll start seeding into the buckwheat with all the mixes that I just talked about. So your oats, your peas, your winter rye, your brassica mix, it all gets actually seeded directly into the buckwheat. And then I have a roller. I actually bought the Packer Max roller, and with my quad, I'll just hook onto the roller. I'll crush all that buckwheat, because the cool thing about buckwheat is it's very stocky. So as soon as you crush it or roll over it with a nice roller, it'll just snap over. And then as soon as it's all flat on the ground, I'll spray it with glyphosate, which is like a pretty immediate kill, because now some of that glyphosate is actually getting down into the root of the plant quicker because it's all crushed over. And what that does is it actually helps build the soil a little bit, because you're putting that organic matter right over top of your seeds. And it almost kind of, reminds me of planting a yard and then you spread hay over top of the yard, right? It kind of helps keep that moisture in. Well, that's kind of the idea with the buckwheat. And that's my plan for this year. Is I'm ready to plant the buckwheat here at the end of the month, beginning of June, and let it take off again. And I tell you what, that Jeff Sturgis, he's got a great plan there. And, I think from my standpoint, I want to do no-till. I don't really want to till up the ground if I don't have to. I had to do it last year just because it was an old fellow, rooty, rocky field. But now that I've got that pretty much taken care of, I want to just go to no-till and not have to really worry about tilling it up unless I absolutely need to. But again, if I was lucky enough to have a tractor down here, and, I have a few buddies that have tractors, and I could always bring them down and till things up. But every time you till up, really, you're just tilling up a little bit more weed seeds, unless your weeds are really, good and under control. And I've used a tractor in the past and, overturned the soil. And it worked too, so there's many different ways, to do it. That just happens to be the way that I've been doing it. And it's been very successful for me. And again, that goes into the design of the parcel itself. I never did Jeff Sturgis. He has like classes and courses on this stuff, but I never really did any of his classes. I would love to someday. But the idea is to start with a food plot, right? New property, new place to hunt, establish the food plot, and then see where the deer are starting to come and move from, and then kind of work backwards. Your doe family groups are going to stay pretty close to that evening food source, and then hopefully the bucks are kind of, right behind them, because they don't want to be bothered with all the does. But once it got hunting season, the bucks really started showing up here, which was really cool. I mean, they knew that the does were here, so they were kind of chasing those does.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting when you talk about it being, 3-acre piece for a food plot, because I think that's super relatable to people that maybe have a little bit of land, but not a whole lot of land, which I think is probably a majority of people. I often see when I see stuff online or on TV, it's usually like a big giant food plot. And it's like, if you're a guy that doesn't have a ton of money to go buy a giant food plot, you just look at it and you just like feel disgusted with yourself. You're like, there's nothing, it's not relatable. So when you hear a guy talk about how he can hire the neighbor next door to tear some ground up with an excavator and just kind of run through it with your quad, it seems like a lot more achievable goal. So that's definitely interesting. Now, this kind of popped in my head too, so I'd be interested to hear how you feel about this. I'm no scientist, but I've got to imagine that all those chemicals in the ground somehow get transferred to the wildlife. Is that ever a concern at all? I mean, they've got to be toxic in some way.
Yeah, Jeff Sturgis, I go back to him because he always talks about the use of chemicals too. And, farmers for decades have been using glyphosate, and, that's basically Roundup. When I say glyphosate, that's Roundup. I go out there, and that is one time I'll wear a mask, to make sure that I'm not inhaling any of that stuff. But no, it doesn't really get transferred to the animals because it's designed to kill the plant, and it's almost immediate with glyphosate. I mean, you spray, you could tell that it's starting to turn like a yellow or like an orange color within the first week, and then by the second week, the plant's almost gone. So an animal is really not going to be eating those weeds anyhow. You can see the deer walk through them, but they're not really interested in eating those weeds anyhow. So I've never really been worried about that. And Jeff always says, hey, if you come here and you don't like to use glyphosate, that's fine. There's different options for you, right? But his big thing and my big thing is weed control, right? And I had beautiful plots last year. I had no weeds in the plots. Yes, I have weeds out there now, but it's after the season and I know the soil was overturned. And one other thing that I should mention that kind of goes along with glyphosate, 2,4-D, and that kind of stuff is doing a soil test. And the importance of it. I skipped that part because that was the first thing that I did. Like as soon as I walked down through that field, I'm taking a shovel and I went to like 7 or 8 different locations in that field. I filled up a 5-gallon bucket. I let some soil dry out, and then I'm close enough to Penn State University, and I took the soil sample in so I could get it back. And my problem was my pH was very low. So that was one other thing that I had to do to the soil is I actually found this really cool stuff because again, I needed like 2 tons per acre, which was, ridiculous amount of lime that I need to put down. So I ended up finding this liquid lime and I could mix with water and then I just sprayed it. So I'm going to test the soil again this year to see how much of a difference that liquid lime made. My guess and my gut tells me I'm going to have to keep putting more down for maybe this year, next year, and even the following year. But the nice thing too about the no-till is you're actually building that soil by the decomposing the materials that you put down, right?
Right,
The buckwheat is good. The oats are good. The winter rye is good. So all that stuff actually puts nutrients back into the soil. And every time you overturn it, really, you're just kind of delaying that process. But no, to answer you directly, I'm not really worried about the toxic levels of anything like that. Farmers have been using it for decades, and I think that it's a proven product. It does work, and that's why I'm going to stick with it.
So I guess, if a guy talks his wife into buying, let's say 3 acres, or maybe it's vice versa. Maybe she talks him into it. I don't know. But I don't hear a lot about, you hear what the land costs, but you don't hear a whole lot of what the seed and the quad and the tractor, whatever route you decide to go. So can you kind of touch on like, let's just play a scenario that I bought, a 3-acre field now, and now I'm getting ready to dive into this like you, like what's it going to cost me? Because I've probably got a small wallet after buying that piece of property now, so I'm probably on a budget.
Yeah. I mean, assuming that you already had a quad, and I was lucky enough that I already had a quad, and I bought the one implement that I bought was the Packer Max, and that was $600-$700 delivered, which is high quality polyurethane. It's a great piece of equipment. So that was the equipment that I bought. The hand spreader, I think that was like $50 on Amazon. So that wasn't a whole lot, but really the majority of it is in your seed, right?
Yeah.
And, and this will vary depending on where you're buying the seeds, where you're sourcing the seeds from. But just to kind of give you an idea, the peas cost about $50 a bag. I needed 3 bags. The oats costed about $40, and I needed, I'll call it 3 bags. I didn't really even use all 3 bags. And the winter rye, that's pretty cheap. Winter rye, if you can't do anything at all, right? Winter rye, if if you want to keep your costs down as much as possible, I should say, winter rye is your ticket because it's $15 a bag for a 50-pound bag, at least around here. So at $15 a bag, it's fit for 50 pounds. I end up putting almost 200 pounds per acre. So, I needed a lot of bags of those, but still, at $15 a bag, it wasn't bad. The brassicas, for 6 acres, it cost me about $50. And that, or yeah, for 6 pound per acre, I should say, 6 pounds per acre. I bought about 18 pounds of that. And that cost me about $50. And I did add some forage radishes, and that's the radishes are really cool because what the radishes do is they actually, they tunnel down through the soil, and it's really good for like irrigation, and it's really good for like busting up the soil, and the deer go crazy for the radishes. But you only need about 4 to 5 pounds per acre, and that that's about $20 an acre. So, adding all that up, you're for 3 acres. I spent somewhere around $700 to $800 for all the seeds. So was it cheaper than buying a tractor and tilling up the land and getting the highest quality seeds? Yeah, it was a lot. But to me, I'm feeding a heck of a lot of deer. I was seeing 20, 25 deer max, but on average, through October, November, even into December, I could pretty much count. I'd see 15 to 20 deer in the field, and by the end of the winter, tell you what, they had that down to almost nothing. So for $700-800 a year, and to me, it's fun watching them. It's fun seeing how they access it, and it's fun for me to plant these food plots. So to me, I think it's worth it. But again, everybody's different, and if you wanted to do it on a budget, I would say, you want to spend $200-300, focus on winter rye and clover and just throw that in. That'll still attract deer. Deer will still show up and eat all that stuff. And this year I didn't put any clover in. Now clover can get expensive. I just chose not to put much clover in. I did maybe a couple of pounds, but not very much. And if I were to cut out the Australian winter peas, that's $50 a bag. And maybe choose to do, soybeans instead. Soybeans are a little bit cheaper than the Austrian winter peas. But the downside with both peas and the beans, first frost, they're pretty much done. Mm-hmm. And they're going to get eaten over pretty quickly. But again, that's why you top dress it with winter rye. So as soon as the peas or the beans get eaten, now you're going to look down through your food plot or walk through it and see, I've got some real estate here that I could use. That's when you top dress it with winter rye. So I always do that around Labor Day weekend. I'll walk through the food plot regardless, and I'll put maybe another 50 pounds or 100 pounds per acre, depending on, what it looks like, what I feel that it needs, just to keep top dressing. And what that does is actually create a layering system, so that first set of grass, or winter rye is already up a couple of inches because you planted it in the middle of August. Now we're in the first week of September, so it's getting a little tall, and then you could top dress it, and it basically creates a layering system. So that ensures that you have, nice green food plots all through October, November, and this year even into December.
So now that you've been doing this, was last year the first year you said you'd done it?
No, I've been doing this since 2016, I think. I wasn't good taking pictures back then, but I didn't have the app. But in 2017 is kind of when I kicked it all off, and I have some pretty cool pictures, and get to remember what I did and how many acres I planted. I think it was either the first year or second year. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think my buddy and I put in 5 acres. And that was exhausting. We had a tractor, But it took us like, I remember taking days off of like my full-time job just to get my food plots in because it was that important. But it was cool because I had this 20-acre field, and I put 3 acres at the top of the field and the north side of the field, and I put 2 acres down at the bottom of the field. It was so fun to watch the deer access that field because some of them would be coming from the south, some of them would be coming from the west, some of them would be coming from the north. But it was neat because you could pack that field with about 20, 25 deer in a night, but they wouldn't get like annoyed with each other because deer will get very territorial like that. But it was neat to see like those family groups kind of live that way, and these family groups kind of live this way. But that was almost too much. And for me, I was experimenting at that time. It worked out great, but it was just a lot. So I think 2 to 3 acres for what I have and where I'm at makes a whole lot of sense. But bigger tracts of land, guys that have hundreds of acres, maybe they want to put in larger plots, or maybe they want to put in strategically a couple different plots to keep the deer moving through and staying on their property.
Hey guys, real quick ad from our sponsors over at Buzzard Roost Saddles. Buzzard Roost Saddles are proudly made in the USA, and their independent angle adjustments on the top and bottom panels provide the ultimate comfort for those long sits. Buzzard Roost stands by their motto, "We ain't fancy," and they help you achieve your goal while keeping things simple. You can connect with Buzzard Roost Saddles on Facebook and Instagram, or you can visit their website at buzzardroostsaddles.com. So we're going to kind of play a scenario here again. We're going to play with the 3 acres, but we're just going to say that your neighbor, or maybe you just, money's not an option and you just buy a tractor. You can either go, the traditional way and use a tractor and all this, or you can do the no-till thing. Money's not an option. You can pick whatever you want. Which one would you pick?
Well, I would say it depends, right? If I had the tractor, though, I would probably appreciate the tractor just because of what you could get done in the amount of time, right? And that goes back to time. How much time is it going to take to do it? I feel like you'd probably get more done with a tractor. Rather, you could even buy a spreader for your tractor. You could buy all the implements for your tractor and just kind of have it sitting there ready to go. As opposed to doing everything by foot and hand spreading, you're definitely spending some time doing that. So I'd say, in the dream scenario, it's great to have a tractor, especially for some of the larger tracks. Smaller plots you could pretty much do by hand and foot if you had to, but larger tracks, you're going to be thankful you had a tractor.
Now, is your plot? Well, we're just going to play off your 3 acres here with a tractor, or using just the 4-wheeler and all that stuff. You're going to use all the same seeds and everything. Is your plot going to turn out better with a tractor, or is it going to matter?
I don't think it's really going to matter. I think the biggest thing is controlling the weeds, right?
Okay.
Because if you don't control the weeds, you're just going to have a weedy food plot, and the deer aren't really going to want to bother with it. I mean, they will, but not as much as if it was weed free. And really, placement of the food plot is important too. Seclusion of the food plot, how you access it, hunter access is vital, important. You certainly don't want to walk through the middle of your food plot in October or November. You'll blow it all out, and you won't be very successful. So really, hunter access has a lot to do with it too. And I watch a lot of Jeff Sturgis. You want to hunt, from the outside in, right? You don't want to walk through the middle of something and bust everything off your property. So you really want to try to focus on the edges of your property if you can, and try to keep all your deer kind of maintained in the middle of your property. So I think that's important too.
So you're just an earshot away from some public land, right? You just, what is it, half a mile from your house?
Yeah, it's about 2 parcels away, but yeah, you're about right. Half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, huge tracts of public land.
So you have this private piece with this gourmet buffet for all these deer. So I have to wonder, do you play with any public land at all?
Oh yeah, yeah. I have over the years, and I continue to do so. To me, it's fun. It brings a different challenge. And again, like me being kind of new to the area, it's fun for me to explore these new areas, scout the new areas, look for certain things like benches and clear cuts and bottoms or the tops. Where do I think deer are going to be moving based on topo? Uh, just try to learn it. To me, I'm a hunter, right? And I want to figure it out. And you're not always going to be successful, and I think that's the hardest thing to explain to kids starting out hunting. Like, every time you go out, you're not going to get one. But I had this I'll call him a mentor of mine years ago, and I was 16, 17, 18 years old hunting, and he'd take me out hunting, and he said, Dan, let me tell you something. You're not always going to get a deer when you come home, but the goal is to learn something new and learn something every time you go out. And that's always kind of stuck with me. And, that should be the goal, is just to appreciate nature, appreciate the movement, appreciate the fact that you get a day out and you get to sit in your woods or walk through the woods, and just to be out. And I always try to focus on learning something new. And that's why I love like listening to you on the podcast, or watching YouTube channels like Jeff. Like, I'm always learning. I want to learn. If I pick up on one thing in an hour episode, even like the guys on the Hunting Public, like I like watching them. Like, I'm always picking something up that they're talking about that I didn't know before. And I just think that I'm always going to be a student of the game, right? And I'm always going to want to learn, and the public land gives me that, because I think with private land, it's cool because you could almost design it the way that you want it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Public land, you can't. So you have to kind of take a different angle and take a different approach at it. And certain times of the year are different in Pennsylvania. If we have a good acorn year, well, you better find those acorn flats, because that's where the deer are going to be. But then, in gun season, once the shooting starts, you better find the bottoms, and you better find heavy, thick laurel, because that's where they're going to retreat to. So it's all time of the year and weather based, and what the trees are doing, what the crops are doing, where are they accessing. Maybe they're leaving the public land and they're going to these big farm ag fields at night. Okay, well, where are they leaving from? How are they getting back in the morning? You have to think through all that stuff, and to me, that's fun.
Deer hunting's interesting. It's like as soon as you have it figured out, you realize that you don't have anything figured out.
Yep.
um, how do like strategies differ for you when it comes to hunting public versus private land? I guess, like, are you less careful on public land than, you've got this food plot and this is your baby that you've put $800 in and you've worked on all year and half the year, whatever. Um, do you, I have to imagine that on your property, everything's like probably perfect when you go out and hunt, but do you worry about that when you go on public, or are you just like, it's bad wind, but like, I'm just going to try it because it doesn't really matter?
I try to hunt smarter, but I also like we all are, right? We're all working, we're all busy. Anytime that you get, you're going to go.
Yeah.
You almost hate to sit on the couch on a good day or even a bad day. You still want to go out. I would say I'm a little less careful. Maybe I would use a bad weather day. Maybe it's a windy, rainy day, and I would still go out on public land. But instead of like hunting out of a tree stand or my saddle, maybe I'll walk around for a little bit, because if I'm playing the wind, maybe a little spot and stalk, see if I could learn anything new, see if maybe I could find a different tree location to be in, maybe, run across some good areas like scrapes and rubs. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that that's where they were, So
Hmm.
maybe you find something new. And, I've done that in the past on a windy, rainy day. In fact, that crazy story. The one year I was on public ground, and you know I decided to walk down through this hollow that is pretty much not very many people go down into this, but I wanted to just to try to check it out. And it was kind of the end of archery season, beginning of rifle season was here in a couple of weeks. And I decided I'm going to go for it. So I grabbed a walking stick and actually slung the bow over top of me. And I just, crappy day, I wanted to go for a walk. Um, so I get down in this bottom, and no cell phone service where I'm at. It's very, very thick. And I started hearing this rumble all around me, and I'm like, oh no, it's raining, but
Hmm.
I didn't know how bad it was gonna rain. And the high heavens just let loose on me, and I'm like 2.5 miles back from my vehicle, and I had to kind of hunker down and just wait it out.
No sense in running then.
Yeah, I was already soaking wet to begin with, so I figured, well, why not just kind of stick this one out? But I think that's the cool opportunity with public land is, you got to find where people don't go if you really want to get onto one, or some big mature bucks. You got to go where the average person won't go. And you hear of guys in opening season, opening day of rifle, and they do well. They get a massive buck. They might be in a great area, and it's those guys that have all the luck in the world, right? They
Not
don't know
me.
any archery hunting. They go out the first day of rifle and they slam a big one, and they're and great for them, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely happy for them. But I like to go deep into the woods and see where the average person doesn't go.
Hmm. So, have you ever experienced anything crazy? I love to hear these crazy like public land stories. Like you're always hearing about like dudes getting shot while turkey hunting, or like some guy, you walk in, it's opening day, and some guy's in your stand, or whatever it might be. Some creepy guy rolling past you on a road. I don't know, but like, do you have any crazy or wild things that have ever happened to you on public land? Because public land draws a lot of characters. There's a very colorful crowd out there. At least anytime that it seems like I'm on public land, it's always like maybe I shouldn't talk to that guy. He's a little bit sketch. I don't know.
Nothing real crazy. And again, like you said, it's hard to leave a nice food plot like this, right? Like if I have it here and it's a good weather day and I think that I'm gonna see some deer, it's hard to leave there. But at times during the rut, and maybe I blew this location out and I'm gonna go somewhere else. So this one day I went public land hunting and parked my vehicle, and I decided I was gonna hike. I was gonna hike the whole way to the top of this big mountain, and there's a nice side by side 4-wheeler path that goes the whole way up. And I knew that if I stayed on that path, I wouldn't spook anything out of it. I was walking real slow. It took me about an hour and a half to walk into there. So I went in there, got the whole way to the top, had a good idea where I was going to go, the location I was going to go, but I didn't really know. I carried my sticks with me, and I carried my saddle with me and my bow. So I tried to keep it as lightweight as possible. Hiked the whole way to the top of the mountain, hunted there, saw a few deer, didn't get anything. But like as I'm walking out, it's dark now, right? So I got my headlamp and I was like, all right, got an hour and a half walk back down, at least it's downhill now. So I started walking, and about 5 minutes into my walk, I hear the side by side behind me. I'm like, oh, geez. I was like, I didn't know that anybody would be up there that day. I didn't see any tracks. It actually caught me a little by surprise. And so I stepped off the side of the path and, shined my light so he could see me. And Buggy pulls up to me and he's like, "Hey, Dan." I'm like, "Hey, buddy." It was one of my buddies that was up there. And he's like, "How did you get up here?" And I'm like, "I walked." He's like, "Dude, you're nuts." He's like, "You walked that?" I was like, "Well, yeah." I was like, I didn't want to bring a four-wheeler. I didn't want to bring a quad. I didn't want to bring a side-by-side. I didn't even want to take my mountain bike. I just wanted to walk it. He's like, "Dude, jump in." Like, I feel bad that you walked that whole way. I mean, it was a long, long, long ways. Even on a side by side ride, it took another 25, 30 minutes just to get down to the bottom. So this is not a crazy story, but it's just funny, like how things work out. Like, I had no idea that he was there. And, I asked him, I was like, "Well, where were you?" And he was even deeper than me. He was, another mile in. So I would have, the deer that he saw, the deer that I saw definitely didn't cross paths. But it's just kind of funny how stuff like that works out, and, you know, we knew each other, we talk all the time on texts and stuff and Snapchat and things like that during hunting season, because we both, do a little bit of public land hunting. But I was very appreciative of the ride back down, you know. But it's funny, when you start hunting the public ground, and if you've been hunting there for a couple of years, or you start to learn who's who and where they're
Mhm.
at. And these guys have stands on this side of the mountain, those guys have stands over there. That's what they do. So you just, as you start doing that, you start to pick up on where people are, and you try to stay away from them. I've always been respectful, and you do your thing, I'll go find a different spot. There's plenty of land out here. Pennsylvania, we're lucky here because there's just thousands upon thousands of acres of public land. I think it may be one of the top states for public land, actually.
I find it interesting that you're walking down this path, and I imagine it's dark because you're out of the stand, and you actually shine your light to let this guy know you're there. Because maybe I'm just paranoid or something, but I'm a guy that if I see lights in the woods, like I'm shutting mine off and letting them pass. I will talk to people in the parking lot, and I think maybe some of it is I don't want them to kind of know where I was coming from, but like if I see a four wheeler or something coming down the path, I might go about 10, 15 yards in the woods and shut my light off and maybe meet them back at the parking lot and maybe tell a little fib about where I was hunting at so nobody
Right.
tries to hone in on my spot. Um, so we talked a few weeks ago, a little bit, and you were gonna tell me, I believe it was your 2021 buck story, or was it 2020?
2021. Yeah.
2021. So you were gonna tell me this story, and you're like diving into it, and I'm like, no, 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 stop! Like we gotta save it for the show because like I won't have the right reaction. So I wanted to save it all right now. So um, I'm ready. I'm ready to hear it, and I'm sure the listeners are too.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Yeah. So, I told you the background of, putting in the food plot. That was kind of number one action plan that, at the new property. I set up a few tree stand locations, a little back off the food plots, a couple more closer towards the food plots, a couple different locations. Again, I'm trying to learn this. I'm trying to figure out where the deer are moving, why they're moving in certain directions. Um, and I run cell cams too, so I kind of have a good picture or an idea of what deer are here. And it's funny kind of how everything works out. So the does will find a food plot first, right? And then the doe family groups, they pretty much establish that this is their home plot. They don't go far. They literally, I could almost see them bedding just inside the woods of the food plot. Like that's literally how close that they were bedding to this. They basically put their hooves down and said, "I'm not leaving." But once you get to middle of October, end of October for us, you start to see some curiosity in the bucks. So now the
Mhm.
bucks start, sifting in or just coming through. They're searching for food. They're searching for does. And then you find out that some bucks kind of want to stay local. which is cool. I mean, that's the goal, right? Is to get some of those big mature bucks to stay local. And in the evenings in archery season, we're allowed to spot. So you're allowed to take a spotlight out up until 11 o'clock p.m. and you go spotting. So my neighbor and I, oftentimes during October and November archery season, we'd go for a truck ride and start spotting. So the one night, a couple of parcels away from where we hunt, boom, huge 10-point shows up. We're like, whoa, like where did he come from? And we think that he probably came down from the public land. These are the bucks that I'm after, is those mature bucks, right? I've shot a lot of smaller bucks in my career and my hunting career, but I'm after those big bucks now, and that to me is the fun part, because that's the biggest challenge, right? So we're like, where did he come from? Like, that's awesome. Like, okay, well, that's good. He's local now. Like, let's try to keep him here, not spook him out. And we had maybe 2 or 3 other 10 points that we saw while we were spotting. But the interesting part about that was it was late at night. I mean, this is 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, so they're definitely waiting till well after dark. Can't hunt them in the dark. You can only hunt them in the daytime, right? So I was like, well, do you think he'll find my food plot? Like, he's a couple parcels away. Do you think he'll find us? Like, we hope, we're kind of the hope and the prayer. So about a week went by, and now it's getting into November, and he shows up in my food plot. I'm like, all right, game on. He's local. He knows about this now. He's not going far. He knows that there's plenty of does here, and he pretty much ran off all the smaller immature bucks. So I'm like, this is perfect. Game plan worked. So, I hunted him pretty hard, but I was very particular and selective on the days that I chose to hunt him. So fast forward about another week, I just had a perfect setup. I saw him the night before. I wasn't hunting, but I saw him the night before, and I knew where he was coming from. I knew where I had a good idea where he was staying. But my problem was, how do I hunt this guy? Because where he was coming from, like, I wasn't prepared, and I didn't really have a good tree stand location, to kind of cut him off before he got to the food plot. So, I'm contemplating this in my head, like, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I hunt him? And I finally made like a game time decision like that day. So I forget exactly day. I'm sure I can look in trophy tracks and tell you. But 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or between 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go into that food plot, and I'm going to set up a blind in a corner of the food plot, right? And I'm going to tuck it in. I'm going to kind of blend it up so it shouldn't really stick out too bad. And I'm going to hunt that this afternoon. Like, that was my plan. So I got down there at noon, set it up, got back here, waited till about 3, 4 o'clock, went down to it. The field was clean. I had good access. I actually came in a whole different way, because I obviously didn't want to walk through the food plot. So I'm sitting there in this blind. First day I put the blind out, right? First hunt out of the blind. And these doe came into the food plot just like I knew they would at 4:15. And then they started stomping at me. Yeah. Then they started snorting at me. I'm like, I have this like wee little hole that I could look out, like that was it. But they knew that blind never sat there before.
I was gonna say that's a ballsy approach, because I've experienced the same thing, and like I'm always sketched to hunt out of a new blind. Like if it's not out 2 or 3 weeks prior, I just know it's gonna end bad. So I was wondering where that was gonna go. So yeah, exactly where we thought it was gonna go.
Yep. So blew out the food plot. That was about 4:15, 4:20, 4:25, something like that. Blew out all the does because they didn't like it. But they're hungry creatures, so they come right back. They think, okay, well, it's still safe. So then they kind of got up a little bit above me, but still about 40, 50 yards away. and started grazing again. I'm like, oh great, maybe they forgot about it. And I hear a grunt. I'm like, okay, it's game on now. I think this is him. And sure enough, it was him. He came out. He had no idea that the blind was there, because you know what he's after. He's after the does. So he walked out to, it was exactly, I watched him the whole way. It was 32 steps away from the blind. So I'm sitting in the blind. At this point, I had the window cracked enough that I could shoot out of it. And as I'm drawing back, my elbow hits the back end of the blind, and it makes that swishing sound.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Boom. Gone. I didn't even make it to full draw.
Oh,
And
man.
he was gone. So that's my sad story. But again, like, I was so bummed when I got home that day. I was like, I screwed myself, really. It happened to you, and happened to a lot of other guys, I'm sure. You go throw in a stand, and especially a big old blind. Mine wasn't even that big, but still, it's different. It's different.
Yeah.
It wasn't there all season. You throw it in there, it's gonna screw up the does. And in my case, my elbow, by hitting the back end of the blind, screwed up the buck. And he didn't come back to that food plot for 7-8 days. He was done. He was done with it. So that was my sad story. I mean, I had high hopes. It all kind of worked out, like, leading up to it. Like, I was so excited because, you first see him, you're like, okay, he's here. And then he found the food, and then I started to pattern him. I'm like, okay, I got to get in there. But my problem was I didn't have a dedicated spot to go to. So that will be corrected for this year.
This made me think of this. I've never told this story on the show, but there was a little farm. I guess it was more like a field in some woods that I hunted years ago. And I did the same thing. I had a stand on one end of, on one end of the field, I had a stand, and right across from the stand, I had a blind, but that stand had been up for a long time. I just put the blind up, but I was kind of prepping for gun season, prepping to take other people with me, blah, blah, blah. Didn't hunt the blind because I knew if they come out and they see the blind, they're going to be sketched. They're going to come further out, which is where I'm going to be, across the field in the stand. This 8-pointer that I was trying to kill, he comes out, he walks down the wood line right at the blind, walks right up to the blind. He sticks his head inside the blind because I had the windows open, peeks around, and then just continues crossing the field. It's like, my God, like it did not go the way that I thought it was going to go. So you just never know with a man, but I'm always leery of that too. Like 3 weeks, or like, I ain't trying to hunt it, because it almost always ends bad for me, except for the time the 8-pointer stuck his head in the window, which is insane. Of course, I missed it on film, so that's the worst. So I guess to kind of close it up here, I've been kind of trying to ask my guests to just kind of get a general idea on what everybody thinks, because everybody's from different parts of the country. Some people are in the hunting industry, some people are not, some people are just hunt on the weekends. Everybody's different. So I want to know, and maybe you have a different perspective, because you own a hunting app. So it'll be interesting to hear what the biggest issue that you see in the hunting industry is. And it can be even shrunk down to just between hunters, like any issues you see between hunters. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think from a founder of an app's perspective, something that concerns me, not a huge issue yet, but something that concerns me is the youth hunters, and there's just not enough of them, right? And I think that, we as adults and senior hunters can help that. We could, mentor youth hunters a little bit more. We could get them more involved with the outdoors. I think a guy like you and a guy like me, we've been around hunting for a long time since we were kids, right? That's
Mhm.
how I got into it. It's probably how you got into it.
Yes.
And I feel that, we're not being good stewards as far as, getting that youth group back into it, right? So I think, and what's going to end up happening, once, the senior hunters, quit hunting, and, then it's up to us. We're going to be the next generation of hunters. We need to kind of cultivate the newest generation of hunters and kind of bring them up through it. So, numbers of hunters are dropping, right? I think the stats show that they've been dropping, the numbers of licenses being sold. And that's a little concerning. Is it a huge issue at this point? No, not yet. But it could get there. And I think it's fun for me to kind of see the groups of people that are, active on the social medias, and, what my target audience really is, because when I first started doing this and, advertising on Facebook and Instagram and things like that, you know, Facebook gives you good stats on like who's actually interacting with your posts, the reactions, the likes, the comments, the clicks, you get to see all that. And what's interesting, from the app perspective, is that the best group is real for us is really like 18 to 45. That seems to get the most engagement, the most likes, the most downloads. So that older generation, they're not saying that there's folks that don't log their hunts and use the journaling app, but they're just less likely to, right?
Mhm.
And I've even like noticed that when I'm out at outdoor shows and talking with guys, they're like, "Hey, great idea, love it, but I probably wouldn't use it." Just being honest, and like, hey, that's fine, that's a-okay. But it's fun when you have like these young kids come up and I demo the app for them, and they're like, "Boom, I get it." I had an 11-year-old come up to me and he got it, like that. He's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, so you're basically trying to put me in the right spot at the right time." I'm like, "Yeah, man." Like, you put in what you're going to get out of it. And I could upload pictures, I could do this, I could do that. Like, "Oh yeah, man, you could do all that fun stuff." So yeah, I think it's cool when you see the youth hunters, and you see like their fathers or their grandfathers or somebody else in their family is taking them out. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I always, everyone's always saying like kids are on technology too much, but I think you make a good point. Like younger generation now, even me, I was kind of like at the maybe I was younger when that kind of started, but like I get it, but like I have younger siblings and stuff, and they just like they really get it. So I think when you want to get people that age, you got to give them some way to access it that's fun to them, and I think technology is probably the right way to do that. I mean, what other way to get somebody involved in hunting than to make some funny video on something that they're scrolling all the time, or giving them an app that like you said, it's hard for maybe the older generation, but the younger generation pops right on there, and it seems like they've got it figured out in 3 to 5 seconds, which is really cool.
It's impressive. It really is. You and I are probably about the same age, and we didn't really have phones or smartphones, while we were growing up in the woods. And, that was kind of another driving factor for me being a tech guy. Like, oh, we're carrying these phones with us.
Hmm.
Why not just track it and log it while you're live hunting? You usually pull out your phone when there's not much happening in the woods. You're probably pulling out your phone and looking at something if you have service.
Yeah.
So I think that, just another reason to like, hey, log your hunt while you're out there, make some field notes, document where your trail cams are, add your trail cam pictures to your log, really start to kind of put together your game plan, using this app. And I think you're going to get a lot out of it. So, what I used to do when I was young, and my father used to always tell me to do this. When I got home, I would get like one of those little 3x5 index cards, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd write the date at the top, and I'd write where, and then the location that I hunted, and then what I saw, and then if I harvested something, make note of it, like 8 point, 7 point, 6 point, whatever it was. Like I'd just write it down, and then I just kind of like shoved it into my hunting drawer. But now this is a much easier way to keep it all organized. One spot keeps it organized, easy to use app. I can make a log. Now, of course, I designed it and I've been using it for years. It doesn't take me long at all. I mean, within 5 minutes, I could have a log journal, entry. And especially like if even like you said, you're adding them to your notes on your phone. Well, you could just copy and paste the notes and make your journal and, upload it. And I think it's cool because you could go back in time. You could go back to last year. You could go back, 10 years. It doesn't matter. You pick the date and you add your journal entry. So, um, very, very cool. And we see a lot of people doing that, and it just continues to take off for us. We're excited about it. We've got a great team, and we're not going to give up on this. We're gonna put our nose into the computers and try to get more users. And it's fun to me to meet guys like you, that are in a different geographic location. We share the same passion. Um, you have great ideas and you have great guests on your podcast. To be invited to your podcast is just, to me, I'm so thankful and appreciative. It's just been a great relationship that you and I are going to have, and that's awesome to me. And I just love meeting new people. I love talking about hunting. This is, like both you and I, you could tell, like we're super passionate about it. And to get this out in front of more people is just, to me, I can't be more thankful for this opportunity. So I just wanted to say that as we kind of close things out here, and just, grateful for the opportunity to be on this.
Dan's hitting me in the feels right now, man. He's hitting me in the feels. Yeah, man. I wish I had known about trophy tracks, and it's funny that you've been around so long, and like it's 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 weird how companies are around and they're like they've got it all going on, but just like sometimes you just don't hear about them. And I'm really kind of upset that I didn't know about this last year, because I had the best season I ever had last year, and I would have loved to have all the journal entries from it. So this year I'm doing it. I always say I'm going to do it, but I'm going to use the app and it's going to work out. So I'm
Nice.
looking forward to using it, and it'll be fun. Like I've always thought, like, I do TikTok and Instagram. Everybody does all that now, but I've always thought it would be fun for your kids to kind of look back on too. So when you're 50 or 60 years old, you're like, oh shit, I remember I used to do this journaling thing, trophy tracks. Yeah. And you give your son the login information. He's like, remember back in 2022 and you shot that deer, and you've got all these notes in here and how your arrow snapped in half. And it's just like, I don't know. It's cool, man. I love that kind of stuff. So got to
Yeah.
document it down so the next generation can read it and they can learn from it, and so they know all the struggles and hell you went through in the woods sometimes.
Those memories are there to last a lifetime, right?
Yeah.
I often wish I would know like what my grandfather got over the
Yeah.
years, and I
Uh-huh.
was never lucky enough to meet him. He passed away years before I was born, but all I get is stories. He hunted here and he got this,
Uh-huh.
like that to me is awesome. And, my uncle took me up on, part of the mountain where he hunted, and he's like, I think that tree stand might have been his, this old beat up tree stand, he couldn't really remember. But how cool is this now that you could make logs and pass them down through generations like that? That's just so cool.
Yeah.
And you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said that. So
I've always
I'm
wanted
glad
to
you
kind of
observed
like I've always wanted to kind of like get the meat of the story of like grandpa's hunt. So now it's going to be interesting because you can like read it, you can see it on like TikTok probably won't even be around, but the video will be like floating around somewhere. But you know what I mean? It's cool to hear more than that's just his spot. And you get to hear like, oh, grandpa fell in the river that day and broke
it.
his leg, but he ended up shooting a deer. It's just,
Right.
it's super cool to look back on. But um, Can you, for anybody not watching on YouTube, it's scrolling here at the bottom, all your social media links and your website and everything. But anybody that's on Apple and Spotify and Google and stuff like that, they're not going to see it. So can you kind of tell everybody where to find you, where to connect with you? You can even throw your email out there if somebody has some kind of questions. Um, it's yours. Tell everybody where to kind of connect.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam. Best place, I'll be honest with you, best place is trophytracks.com, all one word. That's where you could read about, more about the app, the features in the app. We have a blog section that we write blogs. We have some how-tos out there. We have all the Hunt Pro information. So I know we touched on that a little bit in the beginning, but there's a little bit more info on what Hunt Pro is and why you'd want to go pro. So a great resource for us or for you guys. We also have a way you could sign up for Hunt Pro. If you give us your email address, we'll give you 3 months free of Hunt Pro to test it out. So we're happy to do that for you guys if you want to use the Hunt Pro version. And we have a lot of folks that'll just send the email in October. That way they have it October, November, December, right? Those 3 good months, and then they'll renew it again the following year. So we see a lot of that. Facebook, Trophy Tracks. We also have our page on Trophy Tracks. And we got Twitter. Not very active on Twitter. Want to do some more with Twitter. And the other place that we post to is Instagram. Trophy Tracks app is what our Instagram handle is. And we do have TikTok, trophy.tracks. Again, it's kind of like Twitter. We're not super active on either Twitter or TikTok, but that's kind of what we're planning to do. Put a little bit more content out there. I think these past couple of years, and maybe this is a reason you didn't really find us, is we were more focused on the app and rolling it out and getting some users to test it and tell us, what they liked about it, what they didn't like. Took us a few iterations. So we weren't very good on the social medias, but at least last year and the year before, we started running, sponsored ads on Facebook and Instagram, and it worked. That helped get some of the word out. And, we're not going to be like those super pushy people, that we're a small team. We want to put out some good content and let users have fun with it. And, if you want to reach out to me directly, my email is dan.hansel@trophytracks.com. And you send me an email and let's talk shop. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm happy to receive feedback. Be honest, be open. I always appreciated that. I always thought that feedback is a gift, and I look at it that way. So we take this stuff pretty seriously, but we also like to have fun, and we like to design apps that folks will use and get a lot of useful information out of it for themselves. We're here to help you. We're here to help you hunt smarter. So check us out all those places, and know that we're an email or a couple clicks away.
Yeah, and if you guys, anybody that's I'm not sure who follows Hunt the Wild podcast on TikTok, but probably in the next month or so, I'm going to be doing some videos on there about Trophy Tracks, just to kind of give you guys a better idea of what it kind of entails. I know sometimes it's easier to watch a 30-second video and kind of see how stuff works. So be watching for that, because it's coming up soon. Squirrel season in Kentucky's getting ready to start, and I'm going to be hammering that app. So Dan, thanks again for coming on. I really enjoyed it. I think, getting the word out about your app is going to help a lot of people, because I know there's guys out there like me that want to journal, but they don't want to organize. So it makes it easy for them. It's all in one place. And if their phone breaks, they can log into the app and still have all their information. And yeah, it's super cool, man. So appreciate it again.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Adam. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yep. I'll be in touch.
Okay.
All right. We'll see you.
All right.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Hunt the Wild podcast. If you enjoyed the show and it's brought you some sort of value, I'd love if you could give me a rating and a review. Just a few seconds of your time can help me better understand the type of content you all enjoy, and it would mean the world to me to hear from all of you.